Hi. So the guest this week on my podcast is Caroline Wilder. And Caroline and I have known each other virtually for some time now. We've never actually met in person, but we share a lot of the same values. And one characteristic that I really admire about Caroline is that she's so outspoken about her conservative values. And I see that you've taken off in the Twitter space recently, and congratulations for that. Your voice is really being heard by so many people, which is fantastic. So I wanted to first start by giving everyone kind of background on who you are and how you were raised and why you're so outspoken about your conservative values. So my first question for you is, was your family conservative? Were you surrounded by conservative people when you were younger? Can you tell me a bit about that?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for the kind intro. It's been super cool getting to know you over the last couple of years. I did grow up in a conservative family, and ironically, I grew up with a dad who was a conservative talk show host on the radio.
Oh, wow, okay.
So politics was something that was talked about in my home frequently. Religion and faith was very important to me and to my family. That was something that I grew up around. So that it is surprising to nobody, the ethos of my life and where I've ended up now, because it's very consistent with how I was raised.
Okay. So I'm assuming your dad is pretty aware of, everything that you're doing right now, and how does he feel about that?
He is aware. I think that, the world that we live in today is not the world that we lived in 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And so I think, for parents, there's a little bit of nervousness anytime their kids are kind of getting involved or being outspoken in the political sphere. And I understand that, but I also am lucky to have parents who are very supportive of what I'm doing. They know that I am living true to my convictions and consistent with my values. And I think that's all that they really would want for me, truly.
That's awesome. It's really great that you have support from your parents, because I feel like a lot of young adults today come from more liberal parents, and if they do have conservative values, then their parents basically disown them. So that's great that you have family support there. So I also wanted to clarify what being a conservative means. So a lot of people have a different definition for conservative. So being politically conservative, what does that mean to you? In your own words, how would you kind of define that?
To me, I think being conservative is just kind of the place that I find myself in, because I did grow up in a Christian household. My faith is very important to me. And we live in a country that, like it or not, and there are many who don't, we live in a country that was founded on Christian values. So conservatism should be about conserving all of those values, to hold true to the Constitution, to hold true to family values, the belief that the primary political unit is not the individual, but the family. That's the building block of our society.
Yeah.
And I don't think that, I think that sadly, we are having to have this conversation because conservatives haven't done an excellent job of conserving much of anything, it feels like, especially in the last couple of years. But yes, the conservative movement should be primarily concerned with traditional American Christian values.
Okay. I think that's a good foundation to have. I mean, if the family is the base, then you really can't go wrong. So I think that there's a lot of power in that. Okay, so when did you first get involved in the conservative movement? What's your first memory?
I've always enjoyed debate. I loved history class in high school because we did a lot of debate around history and politics. But as far as like my actual involvement and really speaking out, I would have to say that the moment I really decided that it was important to be outspoken was actually the withdrawal from Afghanistan.
Okay.
That was just coming from a family with a history of men who have served, of men who are serving. It was terrifying to me to see our government and our president handle things the way that they did, and to kind of just feel no accountability to the American people to explain themselves, to see accountability for the areas where that went wrong. That was kind of the moment for me where it's like, I think that being politically active is important for the people who are home, who are not out there fighting for our country. That is how we respect all of the people who have gone to war for our country, is by preserving what they have fought for, and by preserving what our country is meant to be. And I that was kind of a moment for me where I thought, wow, if I have convictions about this, and I'm starting to see this in a different light, it kind of feels like a slap in the face to do anything different.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. What year was that again? That was 2020, I want to say?
That was August 2020.
Wow, okay. Yeah, I remember that was a very significant event. And that's interesting that that's the event that sent you kind of over the edge and made you feel like...
That might have been August 2021, now that I'm thinking about it. It was August 2021 because the election was 2020.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. That makes more sense. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. So moving on, what do you think is the biggest issue facing the conservative movement today?
Division. I think that
like within the conservative movement itself, or
yes, I think that Democrats and the left are very good at mobilizing, coalescing, deciding we're all on the same team, we're all sticking together. And a lot of the time it feels like the only thing conservatives can agree on is that we all like tax cuts, which is pretty sad. I have seen a lot of infighting within the conservative movement just in the last couple of months. And that is something discouraging to me in these spaces that I host on Twitter. My co-host and I are often saying, like, we have to get over this idea that we're putting everybody to a purity test. If Tulsi Gabbard has different ideas about abortion, but is better than what we're getting from the left, and she's someone who is fighting for truth and objective reality, I have to figure out how to find common ground with people and bring them into the fold, because I don't think that people on the right or conservatives really have, I think they get caught up in the drama of a lot of the culture war stuff, and they haven't crystallized their thoughts and opinions to the degree that they're willing to acknowledge, like, if we lose objective reality, if we live in a world where we don't share objective reality as a country anymore, we've really lost the plot, to the point that all of these issues that are important to me politically, I'm not going to have the luxury of fighting for those things, because we will be so far gone from a baseline from which we can actually fight for those things. So it's, I think, truth, fighting for objective reality, that has to be the thing that we're all concerned about. So we have to figure out how to stop putting people to purity tests. I don't need people to agree with me 100%, but if we can get like 70 or 80% of the way there, we need to link arms and move forward. And the rest of the stuff that we disagree on, we can hash that out later.
Oh, that's pretty powerful. That I've noticed that too on the left, right? Like everybody's just kind of, even if they're on different ends of the spectrum of being on the left, they still kind of just agree, and like they're very cohesive in that. I don't see that as much on the right. And so my question for you now becomes, do you think that Trump has contributed to this division within the conservative movement at all?
I think it's important to make a distinction between what Trump himself has done and what the reaction to Trump has been. Trump was a challenge to the establishment. I think that the conservative movement, largely the future of that movement is going to be anti-establishment. I think people are fed up with, bureaucracy, uniparty type of politics. And when Trump came in and was a threat to that, there was backlash at every level of government, media, business. And so I think a lot of the division surrounding Trump was manufactured. Do I think that he invites opportunities for attacks at times? Absolutely. Like, I wish that he would not give them any ground to make some of the arguments and claims that they make. But I think that, on the whole, really, Trump was a catalyst for all of this, but I don't think it was necessarily his doing. I think it's the establishment being threatened by somebody who's serious about undoing all of the things in politics that make it politics as usual, where nobody is really held accountable to the people. They don't take representing the people seriously.
I definitely agree with that. I think that Trump definitely didn't help, but people reacting to Trump, as you said, it was just kind of dramatic on both sides of the political spectrum. And even now, bringing up Trump in conversation is just becomes a heated discussion with someone that doesn't like him, right? I don't think that many people like him as a person, but they really liked his policies. And I think that many people could not see past the person, the personality in him. So I think that definitely played a part. So
I think so. And I also think that, people on the right, they want to talk about, and I think it's such a funny term, but they accuse people on the left of having Trump derangement syndrome, people who just hate Trump so much. But I actually think that equally swings on the right. You'll see people who come out against DeSantis and they are just so hardcore Trump that like they can't see anything else. They view anybody who challenges him as someone who's, disloyal and a threat. And it's like, we cannot be doing that. So the Trump derangement syndrome idea, I think that falls on both sides of the aisle. It just manifests differently.
Yeah. So speaking of DeSantis, my next question is, why don't you think that we had a big red wave in 2022 as it was highly anticipated? So,
I don't know. I haven't completely made up my mind about that, but I do remember, this will be a very unpopular opinion. I do remember right after the Supreme Court ruling on Roe v. Wade, which the right has been fighting for 50 years. As soon as we have a win, we have Lindsey Graham wanting to introduce a bill to Congress to change abortion law at the federal level when we had just tossed it back to the states. I think Lindsey Graham is not, he's establishment. He's not on my team. He might, wear the R as his letter. But the way that I felt about that was, guys, can we please just take the win? Don't make liars out of us immediately, because the left obviously is going to say, well, they're just going to keep going. They're never going to get what they want. It's going to be, it's this, and then it's going to be outlawing it entirely. And I think that I think that they're valid in thinking that. There are definitely people who are conservatives who they want to take it all the way now. And the thing that I would just remind people of is we didn't get here we didn't get here all at once. We're not going to get out all at once. Yeah. And so I think that, you know, for years and years and years of many people being lazy on these issues, the second that they care about it, they think that it ought to be resolved to the degree which they would prefer it be resolved. And that's just not, I'm not making a moral argument there, just a strategic one. Right. If you want to win, this was lost one step at a time. And so we're going to have to win it back one step at a time. But Lindsey Graham taking that to Congress immediately, I think was purposeful. He could have waited a couple of months. He could have waited till December to bring that up. I think that Roe v. Wade definitely played a role. I think the right underestimated how upset the left would be about that. And really like people in the middle. I think there was a lot of fear porn around abortion that really targeted like normal people who are, you know, married and trying to have children, but they're hearing all of these stories where people are saying, oh, if you have like a medical problem, you're going to be out of luck in these states. And true or not, people were believing those things. I know people who are conservative who had really real fears around that topic. I also think that there's just that element of when you expect that you're going to win, you kind of start to take that for granted. Like the underdog mentality, I think is really useful because you still have this sense that you have to fight until it is official that you've won. And I think that just has to be the argument that or the mentality that we carry forward. One of my co-hosts, he always says, you know, we have to be willing to plant and water trees that we're never going to enjoy the shade of. We have to work at this like we are on a treadmill and we just don't intend on getting off. And hopefully we will enjoy the shade of those trees, but that can't be the mentality that you take into a culture war fight like this.
Yeah, that is, I also thought the same thing after Roe v. Wade was overturned June 24th of 2022. And knowing its proximity to the midterms, I already saw it as an issue, as in like, as soon as it happened, the political ads, I live in Colorado, so the political ads were just all about abortion. It wasn't about any issues or like anything else. It was just about abortion, even though abortion is legal in Colorado up until all 9 months. But very few people know that for any reason. They signed a bill into law for the state of Colorado for abortion up until 9 months. But the fear mongering surrounding that conversation was just so intense, and people could not see past their blinders of, oh my gosh, this means that women are going to die. And that's all they saw in this being overturned, and not understanding that this just goes back to the states, and your state might have it legal for all 9 months. So I definitely agree with you there. Okay, so this is a fun question. What kind of hate have you received by being so outspoken on your conservative values?
To be honest, I haven't received a lot of hate. I've been shocked by this.
Okay.
I don't know if it's a vibe that I give off. I don't know if it's like divine providence or what it is. I know that it's coming at some point. It's like if you travel long enough down this road, it will happen. Typically, it's just like little troll accounts that have like 22 followers on Twitter, you know, going off in my replies, disagreeing with me and trying to paint me as a bad person because I don't hold the same views as they do. But I haven't, I sleep well at night. I don't have anything that's like discouraging me or freaking me out or anything like that. It really is just like troll accounts that, to be honest, I'm not quite certain are always actual people,
right?
Like bots. But yeah, that definitely is something that that definitely is, I guess, a talking point that I use to encourage people. It's like, just dip your toe in the water. You really might be surprised that by speaking out about a thing that you care about, like, your whole life isn't necessarily going to explode. And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of what Twitter opening up with Elon purchasing has taught people, is that, like, hey, you have a place where you can speak. And as people are doing that and getting more comfortable speaking, I think they're realizing, like, oh, my whole life isn't spontaneously combusting because I'm willing to publicly support a political candidate or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I think is probably one of the largest surprises that I've had, is that there hasn't been very much hate. I'm curious to know how you would characterize your experience of hate. I know that the title of your podcast definitely insinuates a different story than mine.
So I think you probably don't get hate because you come from a background that's already conservative, and you're probably surrounded by conservative people, if I'm not mistaken.
Mostly.
So, and when people look at me, right, they obviously assume my political stance on a lot of issues, and a lot of the hate initially came from people that I knew in real life, that either knew me before I changed my political views, or either just assumed that I just did not believe any of the stuff that I believe right now. So it's interesting because I'm not really affected by hate that I receive from other people. I mean, I get hate from the Black community. I get hate from other people of color, Asians, Hispanics, whatever, because they see me as a traitor for believing the things that I do, even in the slightest degree. As in, me saying that Black people can be racist is apparently a very controversial opinion. And it's just really all the conservative values that I have is what people have a problem with. So I don't know quite why it is, but I definitely think that it has to do with my race and my gender, and just coming from a more liberal background, I think. So I'm glad to hear that you don't really experience that, because I think that it's worse when it comes from people that you know. I think trolls on the internet, it's like, I don't even know who this person is.
Exactly.
So but it just makes it kind of awkward with people that you know, and they're like, oh crap, I just found this out about this person. And like, they suddenly think that you're a Trumpy, or like you're crazy for just believing this one thing, which is crazy, but
Completely.
It is what it is.
It is.
Okay, so this is my last question for you before we get into a little segment here. So how do you think that we get more people to vote red, especially young people?
I think by talking to people. I think that we have lived in an environment for quite a long time where the only people on the right who really feel comfortable speaking about their politics were people who were like hardcore Trump. Like, they were people who were just never going to be swayed. They were thought of by everyone on the left and some on the right as being kind of extreme in some type of, definitely in their approach, extreme. And I think the left has done a really effective job of kind of shaming conservative views and politics out of polite society. We've been called deplorables and everything else under the sun, and that's all intentional. And I think that during COVID, a lot of people started to realize things maybe were a little different than the world is a little different than they would have liked to believe that it was. And a lot of people woke up to the fact that you're going to have to get involved if you're unhappy with the way that things are. I think that right now we are living in a country where a lot of people think that we're on the brink of World War III and nuclear war, and the economy is not doing well. And a lot of people suspect that it will get a lot worse before it gets better. a lot of people don't feel like they're allowed to be themselves in public, that their religion has to be private, their views have to be private, their personality has to be private, and it's all slanted in one direction. It's only pretty much conservatives who feel that way as a trend. So I think that I've said for a while now, we were all kind of raised in a world where we were told that talk is cheap, like talk is just talk. And for a lot of my life, I've agreed with that. But I think that the idea that talk is cheap is taking for granted the idea that you have freedom of speech. And when you no longer really have freedom of speech, I think you start to realize that speaking is doing something. When I first started talking about all of this stuff, when Afghanistan was happening, I was getting so many DMs on my Instagram saying, thank you so much for speaking about this. I would never feel like I could speak about this. And the more that we speak, the more we are encouraging other people to speak.
Yeah.
I also I think that we speak our convictions and we engage in public debate, but I'm never deluded enough to think that I'm going to change the mind of a specific person that I am debating. That conversation is really for the edification of the people listening and observing, because they're getting to see two sides of the same argument. And I'm willing to debate people who disagree with me quite frequently on Twitter in these spaces. And it's very interesting because sometimes we do change each other's minds, but I don't think that you can go at it with that goal. You have to be concerned with truth. You have to be concerned with agreeing on objective reality as much as you can. And then if you disagree about the solutions to a problem, there's obviously plenty of room for a debate there, but I think we have to untrain ourselves so that we can untrain other people from this idea that you shouldn't speak about politics. I'm of the mind that if we don't start speaking about politics and we don't start getting involved seriously, we're not going to have a country left to speak of. Like America will not be America anymore. I'll say that. But I think, not putting people to purity tests, bringing people into the fold, being concerned with truth. I never want to put cause over truth. And I think that's the downfall of people on the right. They're not willing to hold, quote unquote, their people accountable because they're putting their cause over truth. I am for accountability. I'm not for purity tests. Like there's a calculation that people have to make. Is this person providing a net positive or net negative? And we have to be willing to view those things, in my view, rightly. I'm not sure that everyone would necessarily agree with my assessment, but just focusing on truth and being willing to talk about it and not being too tough on the idea that we're out to change people's minds. I believe that the truth is self-evident, and that's why I'm always focusing on finding common ground, because that's just a little bit of encouragement that somebody who generally just disagrees with me, that we are able to agree on some things. And that's just a little encouragement that, hey, like you're seeing a little truth there.
So speaking of common ground, Matt Walsh recently had a video response to Dylan Mulvaney. I think that you probably saw that. Yes. So his whole stance is to be kind of mean about it, to be direct and upfront. And you're saying that, you're thinking about finding more common ground with people that you disagree with. So what do you make of Matt Walsh? And do you think that it's helping, his reaction is helping or hurting the conservative movement?
I think it's neutral. I think what he is doing is going to kind of activate as many people as it's going to turn off. I think, I'm not somebody who loves like ramped up rhetoric, particularly. I don't like when people are mean to other people any more than the next person. But I actually tweeted about this. I quote tweeted his video and said something to the effect of, I don't like being mean any more than the next person. But if you're concerned about playing tone police with somebody who is fighting to make sure that your kids are never taken away from you because you won't transition them, you've really lost the plot. I mean, and to me, like that is a great example of weighing the purity test, accountability. What is the net positive here? I don't think that we have the luxury of being polite in a lot of ways anymore. I don't ever aim to be mean, but I am unwilling to sacrifice the truth at the altar of politeness. I think Matt goes a little hard in the paint sometimes. And I love the guy. I think the work that he's doing is really important. But he says a lot of things that I'm kind of like, did you really just say that? But he's not wrong. His delivery is just a lot harsher than a lot of people are comfortable with. But I mean, I don't think his view is off. I think his approach could be softened a little bit, but it doesn't concern me to the level that I feel like he should soften his approach. I think we have been lulled into a comfort of, valuing politeness over a lot of things, even in the case of women and children, our personal safety. And that is something that we should never have done.
Yeah, that's, I think that your response to that is very appropriate. I think a lot of people will say the same thing, that, I obviously agree with him on a lot of things. But obviously his delivery is a little harsh sometimes, but that's his appeal. That's what people love about him too. And that's what got him so much attention. So it's doing something.
Well, and I think that what people don't think about is that when you are somebody who feels like you're fighting a fight alone, that increases the intensity. This guy has threats against his family, against his personal safety. He probably feels pretty alone in taking this as seriously as he does. And I think this is something I was talking with people about last night, is that when you feel like you're doing something all by yourself, that frustration and the urgency to fix the thing that you're upset with, you feel like you are having to effort so much more because you feel like it's just you. And it's like, if everyone could just get on board and take what he's saying a lot more seriously, I think we would see that rhetoric tone down.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. I can definitely relate to that too. Okay, so I have this little segment of conservative this or that. So I'm going to list off two options, and you got to pick one. You can either explain or like why you chose that item or not. We're just going to run right through it. Okay, You ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so Ben Shapiro or Steven Crowder? Because they have some beef going on right now too.
They do. When you're talking shows, I think Shapiro. When you're talking the conflict, actually Crowder.
Oh, interesting. Okay. DeSantis 2024 or Trump 2024?
Trump. I think things that...
Interesting. Okay.
It's not because I like Trump more. I think that... I think he has a key advantage that DeSantis doesn't have. He has seen what the swamp looks like from the inside at the executive level, and DeSantis hasn't. So, I mean, Trump has had some time to learn from his mistakes as far as the people who he's surrounded himself with. He has good goals for the country. And so I think that we should utilize every term that he could serve in office. That's not to say that I don't like DeSantis or I'm out trying to find anything wrong with DeSantis. I would love a DeSantis 2028 ticket. But I'd like to get the most that we can out of Trump before we go there.
Interesting. I'm curious to see how people respond to that answer. Okay, so libs of TikTok or gays against groomers?
Libs of TikTok.
Okay.
I love them
Texas.
both.
Okay. They're both great accounts. Texas or Florida?
Texas.
Fox News or Daily Wire?
Daily Wire.
Truth Social or Twitter?
Twitter.
Nice. Okay. That's all I had for that little segment. I thought it was interesting that you chose Trump. I'm very shocked about that because I kind of put in my guesses. I thought that you would obviously choose Twitter, Daily Wire, Florida. Or I thought you were going to choose Florida. And then I thought you were going to choose Gays Against Groomers. I feel like you interact with that account a bit more.
I do. I think that Twitter has kind of throttled the engagement from Libs of TikTok. So I actually don't see her stuff as much. But I love Chaya. She's awesome. I love Janie from Gays Against Groomers. I interact with both accounts quite a bit. And I think that the work that they're doing is really important. I think on Twitter, we're seeing a rise in sort of like citizen journalism, investigative journalism, and we're seeing some really positive results from that. So,
yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so closing thoughts and remarks on the conservative movement as a whole.
We got to get it together. We got to get it together. I think it's, vitally, I'm sorry, the sun has come out. It's like rainy all morning. We have to figure out how to link arms with people that we mostly agree with and be willing to put the things that we don't agree on the back burner for now. Because I think the next couple election cycles, especially 2024, if we don't make things happen, I think we really are at the point of no return. I don't want to live in a world where I feel like the government could take my children away from me because they don't think that I'm giving them the right values or something. I mean, the FBI put out a memo recently, I believe, saying that they're going to be keeping an eye on Catholics who prefer the traditional Latin Mass as some sort of like extremist group. So, I mean, we are seeing a ramping up in the government taking anyone who disagrees with them very seriously, and the government being weaponized that way. I've talked to people who have been debanked and had the FBI, showing up at their house, people who've done nothing wrong, but challenged the government. And I think I'm sure that adults have said this for our entire life and, the lives of people before us. But I really do think that this is the most important election of our lifetime. There is a lot at stake here. Truth is at stake here. A lot of our rights are at stake. So I guess my message to people who want to be part of the conservative movement is get involved, focus on truth. Don't think that your civic duties are just showing up for jury duty and voting for who you hope wins and waiting until next election cycle if things don't go your way. Get involved, be calling people, be holding people's feet to the fire. That is how we get things done. And I'm encouraged to have found a community of people that is the way they view this. So it's like, I feel like I have people to link arms with. We're just trying to see how many other people we can get in there with us.
That's awesome. That's such a positive mindset going into this. And I think that a lot of conservatives honestly lack that because they feel so discouraged after 2022 and the midterms, obviously, and then the 2020 election as well. So I think your outlook on the conservative movement is really positive and really powerful. So
Thank you. I love hearing that people think I'm positive, because it's like we're down in doom and gloom every day with the news and the happenings of what's going on. And so I'm encouraged anytime somebody would describe me as being positive, because I think that should be encouragement and proof to people that like this doesn't have to swallow you and make you depressed. You can get involved and actually find a lot of positivity and fulfillment from that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It was a pleasure talking to you. You were a wonderful guest.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This is my first podcast, so I'm
really?
honored to be here. Yeah.
Yay.
This is very,
this
very
was your
cool.
first one. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you.